So it always starts the same way. You're in, you're open, you're excited, and then suddenly you're gone. You tell yourself that you need space, right? But in truth, is it really that, right? But if you're really honest with yourself, it's not about this woman. It's a pattern. You can see it. It's been happening in your life again and again and again, right? And every time you feel or you tell yourself that this time is different, but it ends up the same way. There might be different excuses and different reasons, but you keep pulling away. I know this pattern because I did it for the best part of 10 years of my life, right? And I've coached tens and tens of men out of this pattern into healthy, loving relationships. So I'm going to go into the details here about what you need to do to stop pulling away, right? Because this is what we're doing, right? We meet someone we like and then we pull away. We meet someone we like, then we pull away. And we always have reasons and excuses that make sense that you can explain to a friend and they'll agree with you. But deep down, you know you're bored of doing this, and that's why you're listening to this podcast episode with me, David Chambers, our men's dating, relationship, and intimacy coach, right? So, what's the pattern? The pattern is this recurring pattern of you meet someone, things start to build up slowly, you're kind of in to start with, you're excited about them, you enjoy their company, you feel that it's something different, you feel excited, you like them, you care about them. And then slowly you start creating space. Slowly you start finding faults. Yeah. And here's the thing is you probably think that the reasons and the ideas you have about what's happening make sense. Maybe she works too much or she works too little, or she wears too much makeup or she wears too little, or she's not as beautiful as you'd like her to be, right? Or she's too good looking for you, right? What you're seeing is that there's similar things come up. There's always a fault. There's always something wrong. There's something that feels off inside you sometimes as well, right? And what you keep doing is you keep attributing it to the woman, right? You keep thinking, if I met a better woman, a different woman that had these traits, this would stop happening. And I laugh because like I said, I did this for 10 years, right? And here's the thing I have to tell you. It's not about her, right? It's not that you've lost attraction. It's not there's something missing. The truth is, this is your pattern, right? This is a thing that you keep doing. And if you don't do anything about this, it's just going to keep happening, right? This pattern of getting close, liking someone, finding faults, finding issues with them, the relationship, not being able to express your emotions and feelings clearly, struggling with affection, love, sometimes sexual intimacy, often intimacy, emotional connection, when it starts to get deep. This is not just happenstance. This is not accidental. This is something called avoidant attachment. Now, I'm not going to go into loads of detail about avoidant attachment here, right? Because I've done whole hour-long episodes about that. But what I'm going to tell you is that avoidant attachment is a protection mechanism we use to stay safe when it comes to love. Somewhere along the way, your mind, your body, your nervous system has learned that love is either unpredictable or unsafe. Maybe you had a parent who was emotionally volatile, in and out. Maybe you had parents who were a little bit neglectful. They might not super neglectful. You might just have a dad who was a bit emotionally closed down or was in and out of your life to some degree. Sometimes it happens when a dad's just working away a lot, right? Or they're just not as emotionally responsive to you as you like. And you learn that having feelings, right, needing somebody leads to hurt and pain. Right? I got this from my father. I wanted his attention. I wanted him to pay attention to me, but it didn't feel like he was interested. He was busy with his own life, right? And I didn't see him regularly. I saw him very irregularly. He often counsels on me. And I decided as a young boy, unconsciously, I'm not going to care because if I care, I get hurt. And then when I was about 17, I got into a relationship. I was fully in, loving, all that kind of jazz. And then what felt like suddenly she broke up with me. And I created this story of I'm going to stay a little bit aloof. I'm going to stay a little bit cold, right? And I'm going to keep a bit of distance, right, between me and partners to keep me safe. This is a learned protection mechanism and habit. Finding a new woman doing or swiping doesn't solve this issue, right? As I said, there's often a struggle of vulnerability as well that comes up, right? And you probably feel some shame around expressing your emotions too much or expressing your needs, feeling weird, feeling too much, right? Sometimes you might experience yourself as defensive as well, right? I feel like I've hit the nail on the head. And I'm just talking about this kind of, what's it called? The thing I started the podcast about, this pulling away that happens, right? Because what happens is that you start to like someone, they start to like you, and it feels overwhelming. It feels like too much. You might have stories in your head about, am I good enough? Are they going to reject me? Do they really like me, right? Or it might be the other way around for you, where you're always putting your attention on them, like, are they good enough? Are they going to stack up to my life? Are they going to match up with my lifestyle? Are they going to, match up my family? This constant kind of comparison and thinking about them, right? Focusing on their flaws, right? Pulling away when they get close, when things start to get close and start to feel serious. Maybe that's when you start going on multiple dates, right? It might be after you slept together. It might happen when there's talk of becoming exclusive, right? Or you feel like you should start becoming exclusive, or when they're about to move in. And this can even happen to men when they're starting to consider getting married. This feeling of wanting to pull away, right? Of wanting to retreat to self, right? And like I said, it's not random. It's not even really to do with them. It's your own internal pattern, right? And the thing that happens is every time you get into this pattern and you follow the path of least resistance, which is to exit, to create that distance, to leave, to connect with those thoughts that you've created in your mind and see them as true, you reinforce the pattern. And you might be listening to this in your 30s or 40s. You might have reinforced this pattern many, many times, just like I did, right? And then you start to find yourself in these loops of this regret of the past, looking back at old partners, regretting what's happening. Maybe there's a fear that you're never going to meet anybody. There's a fear that maybe no one's good enough for you, or a fear that you're going to be overtaken, that everyone's ahead of you, right? And here's the thing. The key to changing this is, first of all, becoming aware of it, right? And also realizing that the pattern can be changed, right? And that the pattern is not the truth. One of the things you have to start to contend with, right? And this is probably getting you into action. What you can do is staying in the intensity of feeling of emotion that comes up when you want to run away, when you want to back off, when you want to retreat, is actually leaning in. The thing to do is actually lean in. The thing is to communicate, hey, I am feeling this urge to create distance, or I'm wanting to run away, but I don't want to do that because I really care about you and I want this relationship to go somewhere, right? And there's also something, I've given you 3 things here. It's around the thinking you're having, right? Is to interrogate that thinking and be like, wait, is this really, really happening? Do these things really matter? Because a lot of the time we're putting our attention on things that A, are temporal, meaning they will change over time, or B, things that we don't realize that we have control over. For example, attractiveness or the quality of the sex, I think, is a good example. I've had a lot of men come to me and go, I think about leaving, the quality of sex isn't there. The quality of sex is something that you can actively put conscious attention on to make better. There's a whole wide realm of study around this, right? And, I spent a lot of time studying Tantra, and I bring this into my work with men. And this is a prime example of a space where you can learn techniques, ways of beings, and strategies to create with your partner to create better sex. But the thing in your head is telling you that can never change, right? Or that you can never be more attracted to your partner. They can't become more attractive. Or you're looking at things about who they are now and project them into the future, and you're thinking of the worst case scenario, right? And this is why you have to start questioning your thinking, because if you don't question the thinking, you're going to believe that this is the truth and this will be the truth forever. When things change over time, when you just look at yourself, you start to know that, right? And also to realize, this is the 4th bit I'm giving you here, is this pattern isn't who you are. It's just something you've learnt, right? And this is really important, because otherwise you start to feel incredibly pessimistic about the future, right? But if you don't do anything about this pattern, you don't do anything about the underlying structures, right? The inability to express your emotions, right? Your lack of ability to stay with emotional intensity inside a relationship, because this is what you're feeling. When you get close to someone, as emotional intensity increases, and then you want to reject, right? You might tell yourself that this is what all men do. It's not true. This is not what all men do at all. Right? And if you don't deal with these things, emotional intensity, emotional expression, being able to communicate clearly and openly and honestly and vulnerably with a partner, right? Of looking at somebody not just for their faults, but for who they are as a totality of who they are. If you don't deal with these things, your relationship will keep following the same pattern, right? But you know that already because you've been in this pattern already, right? So I'm going to leave you with this last piece, right? Because I've got a program called Relate. And really what this is helping men with this under the hood stuff. Because you've tried all the tactics, right? You've tried all the superficial tactics and it's not worked. You've tried swiping more, trying to meet more women, meet better women. And the problem still happens, right? And inside of Relate, what we do is we tackle the deeper issues of what's going on, right? We look at what's going on underneath the hood. We start to heal that. We start to rectify that. We shift those stories and those patterns so that you can actually have the thriving relationship that you've always wanted to have and you desire, even if you're a little bit scared of it, right? And if you're interested in that, there's some show notes down below. And in them, there's a wait list. You click on that wait list and it'll take you to a lovely Google form and you just fill in your name and you'll get an email from me, right? And I will let you know when the next time that Relate is open its doors for you to join, right? And then you can start to tackle this, right? And I want to say this as a part of his gang, but if I just listen to more YouTube videos or listen to more podcasts, I can solve it. It won't work. As someone who had to do this himself and has guided, like I said, tens and tens of men through this in my programs, right? Just doing more consumption of listening will not change anything. You need to get to the underlying factors that are unconscious to you because you don't know what happened and how they happened. And you need to start rectifying that. Wicked. If you've enjoyed this episode, share it with somebody, like it, all that kind of thing. Put a comment below. Until next time, ciao, ciao.